Hey, Tess. That was a good joke, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But look, thank you so much for contributing your time to do probably this could be our first video for Diversity Queensland.
Yep.
Where we're looking to just explore people's points of view and experiences on being outside the normative boxes in Queensland, Australia. So I have a few questions here for you that I've written down, so excuse me for putting a bit of paper up in front of us. So the first thing I would like to know about is, I understand you're a transgender woman,
Mm-hmm.
and that implies that at some point you transitioned, and there's also the possibility that you came out, whereas you went from being under the radar to being more public and more social with your transition. Would you like to share your story of how that went for you?
Yep. Okay. So when it became widely known, I was early 30s, like 31. So it's around the year 2000. Our wife and 4 kids at that stage, and that's when it sort of that's when I came out. That's when I could no longer keep it internalized, and yeah, so that's when the world knew that. At that point, my mum and my sisters also, I rang them up and told them this is where I'm at, and this is how things are, where I'm at mentally and all that sort of stuff.
So you rang them and told them? You
Yes.
just said, hey, I'm coming out?
Yep.
And what about other people who you didn't need to ring? You might have been living with? How did you do that?
Well, my wife at the time, we had a discussion, and it's kind of funny, like she always knew that there was some secret there, right?
Yeah.
And she, through a thought process, thought there was another woman, right?
So it kind of was, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was the other woman, and we joked about that later on. But yeah, so yeah, she always knew that there was some big secret that I was holding inside. So yeah.
How was she with that?
How was she with that?
Yeah, how did it feel for her?
Well, it was a bit of a shock because, that's not how she had imagined her life was going to go, but she was very supportive.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and we just kind of, obviously there were some initial upsets and, but if I was to generalise, we just, got on with co-parenting, and yeah, for many years after that, it was still, all sailing ahead, yeah.
Excuse me, yeah.
Yeah.
So when you came out and when you transitioned, it was affecting other people in your life. So your wife was supportive, and that's good. And what about your children and your parents who you told? How were they with that?
Well, their initial reaction was, it's not just because your hormones are out of whack or something like that, like they wanted to put it down to some medical reason, something that they could attribute it to. It's because you had jelly beans on Friday, that, but then I guess that was their understanding, because not everybody just wants to transition, where in my mind I had been coming up to this day for the 20 years prior.
Yeah.
So it was kind of, I had 20 years to process through this, where they had,
And they wouldn't have seen that 20 years.
No.
They to them it would have been a bit of a shock, maybe, a very sudden thing.
Yeah.
But for you it wasn't. It was just that last bit to where it became
Yeah.
a little bit more public.
my mum, I remember, was worried about the implications of, well, this is not going to be easy. This is not going to,
For her or you?
for me.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Yeah.
So she was caring about you at that stage.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
that's what mums do,
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Aren't they great?
So, yeah. And, we did come a little bit closer then, I feel, my mum and I.
Do you feel that's brought you closer? That you've shared an intimate part of her during your transition? Do you think that's brought you closer?
Yeah, it did. And I mean, of course, she had a period of adjustment too, like in the respect of she always wanted a son, so I got two older sisters, and she wanted a son, and I guess I was that for a while,
How cool for her. She got her son
and
a bonus.
and now the daughter. And I mean, hats off to mum too. Like, she gets the pronouns right, and she gets, she only ever calls me by my new name.
That would have taken a bit of effort for her, I imagine, to change around in her mind to do that. So it's pretty clear that she put some effort into that, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Which, I absolutely loved, I still love. Interesting. She's one of her sisters who changed her name a number of years ago. My mum still refers to the previous name as, in her sister, because, I forget, you changed the name, which was many decades longer than my name changed, but which is interesting.
So how does that, what does that mean to you? What does that feel to you, that knowing that she's put that effort in to make sure she gets it right for you?
I feel loved, I feel accepted and I can't really put any more into that,
The term that comes to my mind is parenting done right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, about other people affected in your life. So you said you had some children at the time, and
still do.
And I mean, but they're probably a bit older now because you said it was a while ago.
Yeah.
But they were young then, right?
Yep.
And how old were they?
Late teens, early ranging from about 6 through to 12, I think.
6 through to 12.
Yeah.
That's quite a range. So some of them would have been getting into that part of life where you needed to fit in with the in crowd. So being in would be important, and the others would be still exploring the world. So so looking at the range of your children's ages, how did your coming out with your transition affect them?
In relation to their peers, okay, I'll back up a bit. So, very supportive. The youngest two, we started doing the girly things, like heater and nails, and because I was exploring all of that myself, and that's kind of the age they were too,
you were becoming a woman together.
Yeah. So,
beautiful.
My son, I struggled with him.
So he wasn't becoming a woman at the time?
No. But I'll come back to him. And my eldest, oldest children, they're kind of the boss, they
this
take
is
on
a
that
12-year-old.
Yeah. She was my fashion person, like as in
She was like your mentor. Your daughter was your mentor.
yeah, like and going vertical stripes, no, not really your thing, like that's that's too young a fashion for you. That's like so she was very sensible on that front, So with my son, I struggled because I had felt like I had killed their father, the father figure, by my decision. It took me a couple of years to actually reconcile that. I later discovered that like he didn't actually feel that way. That was all in my head, and we still talk computers and we can still gaming and we still do, so we and because I stayed in a relationship and continued to co-parent, I was still there every day, still doing the normal things that I was doing prior to coming out, but I just dressed a little bit differently, but that was a mindset that I had to get into,
Because you know what I'm seeing in that? It's like a lot of parents are trying to convey this message to their children to empower them. Like, you can be anything you want to be. But how good is it a demonstration that you can be anything you want to be, even a different gender than you started off with? It just shows to them how powerful they really can be to be who they want to be.
Yeah. So that was actually a big growth for me. Like I kind of learned from my kids, a lot about life and all that sort of stuff. So yeah.
So there would have been unknowns, challenges, and things that would have made you doubt whether it was the right thing to transition. Society is kind of say, no, stick to your little boxes, and you're going to say, what boxes? There ain't no box for me, right? And you would have had a lot of pressure from inside to find your place in the world, and the world is saying, no, you've got to be in one of these places, and it doesn't fit. And so you would have been on, I imagine, a voyage of... do you have a phone call in the video thing? Is there a way to make it quiet, or do you need to take it? So, sorry about that, viewers. When you're in a meeting, you're supposed to turn your phone off. You just forget when you're doing a YouTube, right?
Yeah.
So, what was I saying? So, there's a lot of pressures in the world for you to remain in the little boxes.
Yep.
But there's a lot of pressure from within you. You knew you didn't fit in those. So, we're in Australia. We're in Australia, which has a certain amount of acceptance of gender transition. Only a certain amount. It's not like totally glorious. Like, you want to go eat avocados. Well, we're fine with that. It's more like you're in a transition. Well, there's a few aren't fine with that. So there's a bit of resistance from society, but pressure from within. So how strong was that pressure from within? So like, if you couldn't transition, how would that have been for you?
When I finally made the decision that this is who I am and this is where I want to go, there was no alternative for me. Like, it built up to such an all-encompassing thing for me that it was either come out of the closet or check out of life. That was
a really defining moment.
Yeah.
Right, that's big. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's great to be able to reflect back now and going, well, I could have done that differently. But at the time, that was it. It was a very black and white decision. I need to transition now, or.
So it sounds like you were doing the best you could to cope with your world and being who you were, not being true to yourself in that world, and at some point it clicked how important that was to you.
Yeah.
And once you had that awareness, it was a make or break defining moment.
Yes.
And that's the point where you had no other choice but to come out.
Yeah.
And if that wasn't an option, it was check out. Wow, powerful. Thank you for that. So, gender is something that a lot of people are interested in because they're fascinated because it's outside the norms. So one of the other things that seems to go along parallel with that is sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, we know about straights and gays and bisexual, but how does that work when you're transitioning? It's a multiple level thing like that. One is, how does it work in that, you know, you might be straight when you're one gender, but what are you in the other gender? And the other one is, does your sexuality, like who you're attracted to sexually, emotionally, does it shift during your transition? Right? Well, how was it for you?
Yeah. So, because I had kind of, by design, put myself in a bubble, and my views back then were very, again, black and white. Okay, so monogamy and heterosexuality was it, right? So my thoughts were, okay, as a man, of course I'm attracted to a woman. You know, that's perfectly normal. That's how, you know, and yes, I you know, it is a societal norm, and my views on that have changed with time. But back then, that's what was my process of thinking. So when I embraced the enemy, I did question that. Although, like, I was still very much in love with my partner. So, which essentially, you know, okay, I'm a woman and I'm attracted to a woman. So does that make me a lesbian? You know, like, so, you know, it started that whole path of, well, you know, where do I fit in this greater scheme of things? You know, and initially I didn't act on that. Like, I stayed, you know, okay, we're just, because this is a safe place, you know, we'll stay here. It wasn't until ultimately when I separated from my wife that I explored that more, you know, because so this is also, you know, some years down the track on hormones and being able to express myself more and people accepting me as this new person. It kind of freed up my mind to go, well, where do I sit on that spectrum again? So and I was actually quite attracted to guys. And
even before you transitioned, even before you started taking hormones?
No. Well, okay, if I yeah, okay. Yes and no. Yes, the thoughts went through my head. No, I never acted on them. I dismissed them.
You dismissed them.
Yes.
Right. It
Right.
probably wouldn't have been culturally appropriate to embrace them, would it?
No. So, so before I came out, yeah, actually that's quite confronting. Now that I actually review it in my head, yes, I did have those feelings, but again, never pursued them because. You know, I wasn't out in the public as far as, you know, being a woman, and so, you know, to remain in that illusion, like, no, I'm a heterosexual guy with, you know, a wife and kids. You know, I'm the stereotypical, you know, part of normality. But yeah, now that I actually think about it, no, I did have thoughts in a broader sense, but
That's very interesting what you're saying about illusion and heteronormativity and this kind of thing. It's almost as though your transgender experience liberated your sexuality as well.
yes, it did.
Excuse me.
So after separating, I did explore, you know, where I was comfortable at, and went from this black and white, you know, you have to be this way or that way. It became a bit fluid, and realised I'm equally attracted. I'm bisexual, you know, so I'm equally attracted to both. I'm pansexual in the fact that I'm attracted to not only sexes, but I'm attracted to different genders, and so, you know, I'm attracted to people, and what they've got between the legs is kind of irrelevant. You know, it's I have to be attracted to the person, to, you know, and I'm really okay with that. That's like the truest expression of me, sort of thing. You know, that's where I'm at. You know, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. So looking at your identity, so there's a couple of facets to that. It's like, you know, you're identifying as a woman, and I understand there's a concept of non-binary as well. So some people say non-binary femme and that kind of thing. So from what I'm hearing you saying, you seem to have transitioned to a woman. Would you say that in the binary sense or the non-binary sense? So, like, would you call yourself non-binary or would you call yourself binary? Because I've noticed a shift in society now that non-binary seems to be very heavily embraced.
Yeah, I probably would be in the non-binary.
Non-binary?
Yeah.
A non-binary. So you would consider yourself as not full on a woman or not full on a man, but it's like somewhere different. If
extreme femininity is this side and extreme masculinity is that side, it's a fluidic space between the two, right? And
yes,
I can, you know.
But you still call yourself a woman, right?
Yes. So I have, you know, I embrace this and this activities and thought processes here, but you know, if the need calls for it, I'm very, very comfortable going over, you know, not to here, but to here, you know,
So the way you live your life and express yourself, you probably wouldn't be seen as binary or woman. But what about your identity? Do you see yourself as a woman or a non-binary? What would you call yourself in today's culture?
I would call myself Tess. I'm unique. I don't, you know, like I don't. I just try to be true to myself and try not to let. So, you know, we had this discussion before. I am an anarchist. I tend to question, like, well, why does that have to be the norm? Like, doesn't fit me. That label doesn't fit me. You know, why do I have to conform to that? You know, like, I question things.
So you're saying you've been functioning quite fine without identifying as fitting in a certain box. And
Largely.
you're just being Tess. You're not being a trans woman. You're just being Tess, who's a blend of gender.
Yeah, largely, yes. But I certainly enjoy being able to openly express my femininity. And I enjoy the privileges that come with that too. Okay, long hair. I love my hair, and it is a bit of an emotional crutch sometimes. So, and I see it as one of the quintessential things of being a woman. I'm not saying that short-haired women are any less than a woman, but this is in my mind that makes me feel more feminine. Yeah. So
feel it, and you're expressing it because it's something that's visual to other people.
Exactly
as well.
right. Now, I also know that guys can have long hair, and it's a perfectly cool. You got long hair. That's but in my mind, there's a difference. Like I don't feel like a guy with long hair. I feel like a woman.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether I totally nailed your question there, but
no, I don't know if you nailed it either. But what I'm picking up is that you aren't identifying and trying to be a woman necessarily, but you certainly have a feminine side you want to express.
Yes.
And your hair is an integral part of that. So for a lot of people, when they look at men and women and things like that, people are a bit black and white. They get down to the physical, and not everybody's a deep thinker, and they start looking at things like breasts, genitals. There's DNA, but we can't shift that these days yet.
Yep.
Breasts and genitals. Clothing, hair you've already mentioned, body hair. Where are you on some of these other things that people would see as physically gender expressions? And how important are they to you in expressing your gender?
So I like dressing to enhance my feminine side, and so breasts are obviously an important part of that, and
what have you done with that then?
Hormones.
I see you have a bit of breast there.
Yeah, so
quite a bit.
Yeah, so thanks for noticing. And the clothing I wear, I'm already 6 foot, but I love heels because they just accentuate that in my mind,
yes.
The gracefulness of the way you walk, and I sport the supermodel height now in 5-inch heels, but I feel good, and that's at the end of the day, that's all that really matters. Is I'm not hurting anybody by wearing heels. It makes me feel comfortable and confident, and I'm sure that comes across to people that you meet. Oh, that person's really confident and comfortable in their own skin and all that sort of stuff. So, which I don't know, instills a sense of trust in somebody. So the way I dress, the way I do act in public, a certain reservedness, a certain, I'm not going to sort of go in and start a pub brawl or something like that, which, again, I'm stereotyping. I have a certain decorum, I have a certain style of clothes and the way I want to present myself to other people, which includes the way I look and the way I dress and yeah, my body and yeah.
Cool. Thank you. It was interesting what you said about your demeanour in public and wearing the heels and people seeing you looking confident. So when people see someone else looking confident, it is good. But if you were out in public, people see you looking confident, would they see? What do you think they would see? Would they see a woman looking confident, or a trans woman looking confident, or what do you think they would see as this person looking confident? How would they identify that?
Interesting.
And it's hard to tell, I know, from
Yeah.
another person's point of view.
Yeah, interesting. Like, in my mind, I always think people are thinking, oh, there's a trans woman, right? But I've actually been pleasantly surprised, like, so with, when I've met people and, carried out conversations and all that sort of stuff, and I've got to know them better, like we've formed friendships and all that sort of stuff. And I've gone to them and like, I'm a trans woman, right? And they go, what? What's a trans woman? That's kind of been, wow, really? You didn't assume that, I used to be a dude, yeah, that's really so. In a little bit of I tend to undervalue the way I look and appear to people, but that's probably something that a lot of people do. A lot of people, like even cisgender people, go, "Oh, they're staring at my nose. My nose is, horribly disproportionate to my face or whatever." When in reality, it's not.
They're staring at my gender.
Yeah, like so. I don't think that's something unique to being transgendered, but yeah.
Do you think it's possible that when people see you in public and they see this confidence in you, they assume you to be a cis woman because their idea might be that if you're not in the social norm, then you would be a bit shyer or a bit less confident, and the fact that you're being confident is like fitting you into the box for them.
Yeah. I found that in I love a bargain, right?
Yeah.
If there's a sale on price or discounted, in a clothing store, like get out of my way, right? I'm coming in, and I remember like there's a of Target. I'm going to say Target.
We have these in Australia as well.
Yeah. Store, and like, I would always gravitate towards the discounted bags, and initially during my transition process or transition journey, I would not be as confident, right? And I go, oh, I really want to have a look at the rack. Oh, there's a lot of people there, and maybe I'll wait until I go or whatever. And like I'm circling, waiting for them to go, which probably drew attention to myself more because I go, what is this person doing? But I got to the point that like I have every right to be at that rack as well, and I would just like dive in and no, that doesn't fit, that's too tall, that's whatever, and it actually drew less attention to myself because like everybody else there is doing exactly the same thing. I'm just another one of the crowd. So
I imagine that a lot of people early in their transition, people exploring it, would be going through a lot of that themselves. So I've been so shy in these public bi-gender places where they feel they didn't fit.
Yeah.
And how hard for them to get the confidence. So I mean, the fact that you went through that and you can see that's awesome. So outside of that, is there any other advice you would give to people who are anywhere on their transition journey that you went through up until where you are now? Is there any like key things that you would go, if only I could have gone back and told the younger person this earlier, I would have so wanted to know that. Is there anything you can share with people?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking along the lines of going back. If I could send a message back to my younger self, I would say transitioning is going to be tough. You're definitely going to go through some hard times, but the results are definitely worth it. Like you're going to become a better person for it. You're going to, be true to yourself and yeah.
That's beautiful. It's giving me chills.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Any last messages?
No, I can't think. Actually, yeah. Talk. Sometimes just saying things out loud, even if you don't have somebody in your life that you can talk to these things about. Talk to the mirror, talk to the coat rack, but get that inner voice speaking. Sometimes makes things clearer in your head. Like I would have to ask a neuroscience what the process behind that is, but like hearing a voice outside of your head changes it somehow.
No, it makes a lot of sense because you need to change the way you're looking at it to express in it. So when you do that, you're seeing things a little bit differently, and also by putting it out and then hearing it again, you're also seeing it, hearing it a little bit differently as well, and all that is just a little bit of information you might not have had access to before just by thinking it inside your own head.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense. And if you do have somebody close, being able to bounce ideas off them as well, as long as they are respectful and accepting of you, I think someone who would be prejudiced or biased probably wouldn't serve you. And there's a lot of people in this world that are. But if you can find good friends and there's support groups and things out here.
Like I'll just add, and I know we're probably going over time. I had the opportunity to talk to counsellors earlier in life, which could have helped me immensely, but I chose not to impart that knowledge that I had in my mind about my desire to wanting to transition. These are trained professionals. They deal with this sort of stuff all the time. They know and can manage and support you. So if you get a good counsellor, like somebody that you can relate to,
it's got to be the right person, doesn't it? But they're out there, aren't they?
They are out there. And, if you try the first one and they're not a match, it's not a bad thing to go, okay, I don't think we're a match. Can we find somebody else?
Yeah, I think that's really important.
Where people probably get into the mindset of, oh no, they're professionals. They, this is the doctor I have to stick with. This is the therapist I have to stick with because this is the one that's been assigned to me. If it's not a match, specifically, if it's not a match, it's not a match. And this is your life that you're trying to manage. You need somebody that's a match,
You do, because who's the expert in your life, Tess?
You are, yeah.
No, you are.
Yeah,
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, that would be the last thing that I would add. Yeah.
That was beautiful. I really want to thank you so much for sharing some of your journey, some of your soul, some of your feelings and what's going on for you. And I hope that's been a benefit to other people. And, really, really appreciate it. So I'm not even going to do the whole click the thing, you know what to do. Thank you so much for watching, and we hope to do more of these.
Bye.
Bye.